No matter the NFL roster, from the defending champion Kansas City Chiefs to the team that had the number 1 overall pick in the Cincinnati Bengals, every NFL team has at least one player above average on their roster. Obviously, some teams have more than others, and unfortunately some of those players are good or even great, but have little to no help around them. They put up good performances year after year, while their team doesn't live up to their personal performance. Some players right away come to mind when discussing good players on bad teams, and oftentimes a lot of these players put almost absurd numbers to not go to the playoffs or to be a first-round exit. That brings us to the topic of today's video, is discussing some current and former NFL players that put up a lot of empty stats during their primes. But before we get started, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel, as all support is very much appreciated. Now let's begin. The first player we'll discuss, and I can't think of a more fitting player that puts up empty stats than him, is Lions quarterback Matt Stafford. Matt himself is a very good player, but year after year, it's anywhere from 6 to 9 wins, with an occasional 10 or even 11 win season back in 2014. Stafford is 0-3 in the playoffs and has never won a division title. Despite this, he had 7 straight 4,000-yard passing seasons and even threw for 41 touchdowns back in 2011. Stafford has made the Pro Bowl just once in his career, but is statistically usually near the top of the NFL. He is the prototypical empty stat player in today's era, and a lot of it isn't his fault. The Lions have one playoff win in the Super Bowl era, and they've had legends like Barry Sanders and Calvin Johnson. They are overall a poor franchise, and what's crazy to think about is Blake Bortles has double the playoff wins their entire franchise has. But to get back to the point, Matt Stafford puts up empty stats year after year, and will probably never win the big game, at least as a starter. Next up on empty stats, and this has a huge chance to change this year, but it's Bucs wide receiver Mike Evans. Mike, along with Hall of Fame wide receiver Randy Moss, are the only 2 players ever to start their careers off with 6 straight 1,000-yard seasons. Evans often gets overshadowed by 2 other receivers in his division that go by the names of Julio Jones and Michael Thomas. While both Jones and Thomas have had Matt Ryan and Drew Brees to throw them the ball, Evans has put in work for the past 6 years with Mike Glennon, Josh McCown, and Jameis Winston. Evans had 27 touchdowns before the age of 24 and now has 48 touchdowns before turning 27. He is, and people might get uncomfortable hearing this, but on a Hall of Fame pace if he keeps it up. He already has nearly 500 catches with 7,200 yards and nearly 50 touchdowns, and he's still in his prime. He will now have the greatest quarterback of all time throwing him the ball to add to these totals. Unfortunately though for Evans, in his 6 seasons the Bucs are just 32-58 when he plays and have finished last in their division 4 out of his 6 years. They have been over 500 as a team just once in his career, but the good news is, as already mentioned, Tom Brady will be helping out with that in 2020. After that though, who knows, and it could be back to the same old Bucs it's been since he arrived in 2014. Next, we're going to the Space City, and it's for defensive end JJ Watt. JJ was one of the best defensive players of the generation, and the past 10 years had an insane 220 sack seasons. He was a 3-time Defensive Player of the Year award winner, and unfortunately for JJ, as great of a human as he is, and as great of a player in his prime as he was, the Texans are just 4-6 in the playoffs with Watt on the team, and have never been to a conference championship. They have lost 4 times in the divisional round with Watt on the team, and have lost by an average of 14.5 points. While the Texans have made it to the divisional round of the playoffs, unlike the Lions and Bucs, they have never been taken as a serious threat, and let's be honest, this past year, nobody with a credible opinion thought they were going into Kansas City with Bill O'Brien as their head coach to knock off Mahomes and Andy Reid-led Chiefs. JJ helped raise over $37 million a few years ago during the tragedy that was Hurricane Harvey, and he deservedly won the Walter Payton Man of the Year. He is a great human being off the field and a great football player on the field when healthy, which he has unfortunately not been in the past few seasons aside from 2018. JJ will be looked back on as one of the best pass rushers of his generation, but will more than likely retire without a ring, unless when he gets into his mid-30s and beyond, he goes ring chasing. But for now, JJ has put up season after season of empty stats. Next up, and this is a player in a situation similar to JJ, is Bears defensive end Khalil Mack. In 6 years, Mack has won the Defensive Player of the Year award, been named to the Pro Bowl 5 times, and has been a 3-time first-team All-Pro. He is an absolute force on defense and was a big reason Chicago won the NFC North in 2018 in his first season with the team. He has forced 11 fumbles in the past 2 seasons, and between 2015 and 2018 recorded above 10 sacks in every one of those seasons. He had a down year in 2019 for his standards, but aside from that, he has been a great player and a franchise cornerstone for the 2 teams he's played for. Unfortunately for Mack, his team's quarterbacks have been Derek Carr and Mitch Trubisky, and for as good of a player as he personally has been, he has been to the playoffs just twice in his career, in which both games were losses. The Bears have potential to be one of the best defenses in the NFL, with Mack being the face of it, and he, along with his teammates, needs an offense to help them get there. To be clear, I'm not discrediting anything Mack is doing or has done, or any player in this video for that matter. It's just their teammates haven't performed to the levels that they have. Next, we go to Cincinnati, where a receiver dominated for a good part of the 2010s, and that's AJ Green. AJ was nearly the second receiver to start his career with 6 straight 1,000-yard years, but failed as he finished with 964 yards back in 2016. Regardless, in the 2010s, Adrian Jeremiah was a 7-time Pro Bowler and a 3-time second-team All-Pro. They went to the playoffs in each of his first 5 seasons, but failed to win a single playoff game during that time period. While he and quarterback Andy Dalton had 52 wins in their first 5 years, the last 4 seasons for the Bengals have been a much different story, as they went a combined 21, 42, and 1. AJ is undoubtedly one of the best receivers in the franchise's history, but has 0 postseason success to show for it. At this point in his career, the Bengals are going through a rebuild, and his career may be looked back upon as a great receiver on an okay team during his time there. AJ is 32 years old, and by the time Joe Burrow develops and becomes a great quarterback, AJ will be much past his prime and may even be out of Cincinnati by then. Nobody would look down on AJ for ring chasing at this point in his career because he's been a good player for a long time, and if he gets a ring, he can call it quits and have accomplished everything a football player wants to in their professional career. Multiple Pro Bowl appearances, a Super Bowl ring, all while getting that much-deserved second contract. But for now, AJ has big numbers, and for what reason? Next, we head to the Twin Cities, and we're going back in time just a few years with Vikings running back Adrian Peterson. The Vikings in Adrian's time with the team were 1-4 in the playoffs and haven't been to a Super Bowl since the late 1970s. Adrian was an MVP in his time there, in a season where the Vikings went 10-6 and made the playoffs only for Joe Webb to start the playoff game. Adrian was a fan favorite in Minnesota for many years, but for the time he dominated, aside from 2 years when he had Brett Favre as his quarterback, the players that handed him the ball were, rest in peace, Tavares Jackson, Christian Ponder, Matt Castle, and Teddy Bridgewater. Peterson was a little before his time, because if he could have been around with the defense the Vikings had in the late 2010s, then it's possible the Vikings could have won a Super Bowl, because we all know how much Mike Zimmer likes to run the football. But for the sake of this video, Peterson was the best running back of his generation, and at the end of the day, a lot of Super Bowl teams from that era, such as the 2010 Packers for example, didn't have great running backs. Peterson's ability at his position just didn't transfer to a lot of wins for the team. He did put up a Hall of Fame career, but at 35 years old, he will more than likely retire with what players chase the most, and that of course is a Super Bowl ring. We're going to sunny California for the final player in today's video, and it's former Chargers tight end Antonio Gates. During his 16-year Hall of Fame career, Gates racked up over 900 catches, over 11,000 yards, and over 115 receiving touchdowns. However, during that time, the Chargers never made the Super Bowl and were 5-7 in playoff games during his time on the team. The furthest they went in the tournament was back in 2007 when they lost to the Patriots in the AFC Championship game. In his postseason career, Gates never went for 100 receiving yards, and in 6 of those 12 games was held to under 35. He is a Hall of Fame player, don't get me wrong, but he put up a lot of stats on a lot of not-so-good San Diego teams. Between 2012 and 2018, Gates racked up 360 catches, over 4,000 receiving yards, and 40 touchdowns on teams that went to the playoffs just twice in that span. By no means am I saying this to discredit his accomplishments or anyone else in this video. It's more of I wish the teams were around them so these players could have earned the rings that they deserve in their primes. Other players that could have been included in today's video include Barry Sanders, Joe Thomas of the Browns, potentially when he's done, Odell Beckham. But this video was made to show respect to guys on not so great teams, not to tear them down or anything of that nature. And that's all I have for today's video. I hope you enjoyed, and if you did, please like the video. It helps out a ton, and if you're still watching, I appreciate the time out of your day, and I'll see you guys next time. Have a great day. Skol Vikes.